Hi there. In this video, I hope to give you a bit of an understanding as to what LaTeX is and what Overleaf is and how to use them. So let's start with LaTeX. LaTeX is kind of like a coding language that's usually used to write math formulas and equations. It's super common. You can find it in all types of programs like the Microsoft suites like Word and PowerPoint, but you also see it in programming languages like Python. But one of the most common spots you'll find it is in this program called Overleaf, which I'm going to be showing you today. This is a another writing kind of software that helps you write documents or equation sheets or tests and everything like that. So let's start up. You get an Overleaf, you make your account, and then you get this home page right here that you see. You'll see all of your current stuff. So this is all the stuff I've made and things I'm working on. And then you'll have this big button, new project. So we're going to start there. We're going to start with a new blank project. We'll say video project. Okay, and this is what you'll see as soon as you load up. On the left side, you'll see this window here, which is all of your information about the file, so the saved file, as well as this file outline. So this will have all your sections and subsections. Subsections and sections, they're kind of just like chapters in a book. You'll see them all outlined there later. The middle is your editor. You can have a visual editor, which is what I'm in right now. This is kind of like how you would look at Microsoft Word or something. You have a piece of paper you're working on. But you can also go to the code editor up here, and now you're writing in the code part of it. It's the exact same way, works, everything works the same way, it's just how you want to look at it. For the most part, we'll be working in this visual editor, but exact same things apply for the code editor here. So if I click this little arrow, this will pull up the PDF view. This is the paper that you would see if you saved it or you printed it out. This is what your final product looks like. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to close this here and focus on the editor for now. So to start, we're going to be looking at our what's called a preamble. So that's up here. Click that there, and you have a whole bunch of looks like lines of code. Start with this one. So your document class is the type of document you're working on. Right now we have article. You can change it to say like a legal paper if you had something longer or you want to change it to a card, something a little tiny. That's where you change that. Then you'll have this default one that pops up is use graphics. This is what'll let us put images in our things. Now, if we wanted to add other things, we could add, say, a math package. Overleaf comes with a math package installed already, but we're going to add an additional one that gives us a little more freedom, use some more symbols and everything like that. So this package is going to be called AMS Math. So I'm going to write slash use package AMS Math. Perfect. And that's all there is to that. Now we can use more math symbols. If we want to add other things, which we will later on, we're going to go up to this preamble and add it right there in the section here, right below our use package here. We'll just add other ones. Next, you'll see our title. So video project, we name that. The author, that's me, and the date it was made. And then after that, that's where our document begins. So after the begin document, we can type down here. So before I start typing down there, I'm going to go to the PDF viewer and notice that we have the title, name, but we also have the date. The date doesn't show up in our editor here, but it does show up on our PDF viewer. So just keep that in mind. If something doesn't show up here, it might show up there and vice versa. So we're going to start down here. Right after our title, we can start our sections. So like I said, these sections are kind of our chapters in a book. I use this backslash and I type in whatever I need. Notice there's all these recommendations, all these things I can use. So I'm going to write section. And look at that, section, curly brackets. I can just press tab and it'll finish it for me. It knows what I want. So then I write introduction. And there it is. That's our section. Let's say we want to add a subsection. So this is just subsection. And it is. I'm just going to type it as subsection. And if we pull up our file outline over here, we can see we have a section, introduction, and subsection. Let's move on to commands. So when you're working with commands, you're going to initiate them with this little bracket here. That gives you all the different commands you can use, a whole bunch of them, and there is more. That's the dot, dot, dot. One important one would note is the percent. So if I write the little percent sign, notice how it goes green. And if I write something, this will also be green. This is a note. So if I were to compile this, it won't show up over here because it's just a note. It's describing something in my code. If I were to go to my code, it's green in the code as well. And if I were to write something else, there we go, write something else. Notice the write something else is in black. And I have my percent sign. Everything after the percent sign is in green, and that means you can't see it in the final product. So if I go back over to my PDF, recompile, now it has the write something, the thing in black, but everything in the percent sign is not there. The next one I would like to cover is a line break using this double backslash. So if I want to talk about something, so this is my first line, and then I want to go down to my second line. There you go. This is my second line. Okay, so I got two statements here. I'm going to close this for now. So now I have my first line and my second line. If I were to compile this, notice it all shows up on one line. So in Overleaf, you have to actually separate these with the blank space. So now if I compile it, they'll go into separate lines. Now say I wanted to get an extra space here. If I put a bunch of extra space, it won't actually change anything. This extra space, it just indicates Overleaf, hey, we're starting a new paragraph. So to get that blank space, I'm going to use this little shortcut with the double backslash. Recompile it, and it has a space there. So it's hard to see. I did it quick. One slash, and as soon as you press the second slash, it'll turn that little arrow. And that means it's giving you a line break. Let's say I want to put a photo in. How I'm going to actually do that is one of two ways. You can either drag and drop a photo right into your file, or you can go up to this icon here, insert figure, click that, upload it from wherever you're uploading. So you'll have your file name, you'll have location. You can choose to include a caption, which I have there, and how big it is. I find 3/4 usually quite nice. And here it is. So it goes right into that visual editor. And also notice it highlights enter caption. So this is the caption for our image. So we'll say this is a 555 timer. So we got our 555 timer image there. Nice. We can also edit things like the label. For the most part, a label is just, well, exactly what it sounds like. You give a name to the image. This is a label that we'll use throughout the document, just to reference it. It won't actually show up on your final product, but it can act as a link and say, okay, this is figure number one, or this is whatever figure. So we're going to call this timer. Perfect. Let's say, for example, I wanted to reference this later. See figure, and then I'm going to write slash reference timer. It's already popped up there for me. There you go. So if I go to render this in the PDF, we can see our figure one. It's calling it, okay, that's figure one. Perfect. But where is it? It's all the way down here. And the thing about Overleaf, it seems a lot of time like it's storing its images wherever it feels like in your document. We don't want that. So one of the packages I'm going to add to this, and you should usually use it if you're going to use images, I would recommend is the float package. So I'm going to write use package float. So that's going to let me anchor my image to wherever I have it in the text. So now that I have my image here, oops, I'm going to go up to beside begin figure, and I put in square brackets. I'm going to put an H here. And now that H is there, if I recompile, it should go right there. Perfect. And now it's anchored in this section. If I were to write text above it, so if I were to write text above it, the text would stay right above it. Perfect. And you see this is labeled figure one, and we have a reference to figure one right there. The reason it's really nice to have that, this reference and label thing, is that let's say I threw a couple figures above it. So I threw two figures above it. This would become figure three. Instead of figure one, it now becomes figure three. This reference actually changes automatically. So now this would say see figure three instead of figure one. So I can throw as many images as I want in and out of there. I won't have to worry about going through the paper and changing the numbers manually. It automatically does it for me. So that's the really nice thing about this whole reference thing. Let's move on to another command here, which will just be a simple page break. Let's say I wanted to write something. Here is something on page 1. And then I wanted this is on page 2. Let's say I wanted that on page 2. I compile it. It's obviously all going to go on page 1. So what can I do to make a page break? Well, it's a simple command, just slash page break. That's it. I'll recompile it and scroll down. There it is. This is on page 2. Nice. The last command I'd like to go over is used for equations. So let's delete this. But to go over that command, I'm going to have to kind of explain how equations work. Let's change this. We're going to talk about equations. So to start initiating an equation, you're going to have to use one of 3 methods. So the first one is an inline equation. So say I'm typing something. Here is the sum of 1 and 2. So I want to take the sum of 1 and 2, and I want to put it in that line of text. I'm going to use that little money symbol. As soon as I press it on my keyboard, it's going to make another one beside it. And in between these 2 symbols is where I write my equation. So I want 1 plus 2, and that equals 3. There we go. So inside of these 2 symbols, I have the equation I wrote out, and then it has this handy window up here where it shows what it'll look like on my PDF. So I got 1 plus 2 equals 3. Perfect, that's what I want. And I close it up. You can close it just by putting another piece of text beside the money symbol, press space, whatever you want. Let's say we wanted to center an equation. This would be for, say you're writing a paper. You don't want to draw too much attention to the equation. It's not as important, but maybe it's for a derivation or something. So I'm going to write slash square bracket, and it'll automatically pull up another slash square bracket. Just like the money symbol, we want to write it in between these 2 symbols. What I like to do is press the enter sign, just to give me a clean line to write all my equations here. So now I can write 1 plus 2 equals 3. Just like before, we have this preview window, and I exit just by pressing enter, pressing space, whatever you want. And that'll give me 1 plus 2 equals 3, but it's centered. Nice. If I were to recompile it, get our inline equation, and then we'll have the centered equation. Now, if you've read math textbooks or looked at anything like that, you'll see a lot of the time they have their equations labeled. On the right side, you'll see equation 1, equation 2, equation 3, so you can reference them later. We can do that nice and easily by using slash begin, and then we write equation. So let's say we begin our equation. We press 1 plus 2 equals 3, and now it's sandwiched between this begin equation and end equation instead of the square brackets of the money sign. But it's still the same way. You get this preview window, exit it, just press enter, and it's right there. It looks the exact same as this one in our editor, but if we recompile it, you'll notice it's referenced. It has this little 1 there now. So that's super handy if you want to go back and say, okay, this is refer to equation 1. Now remember how we use labels? We can actually use labels here as well. So if I press slash label, I'll call it, I don't know, first equation. So we got that label, first equation. And then I wanted to reference it somewhere in my text as C equation. And I'm going to put in that reference slash ref. First equation pops up right there for us. There we go. So if I have that, I recompile, it'll say C equation 1. Okay, so now we're going to want to add symbols. Some common symbols like delta, the big triangle thing for usually like changing something. Let's say we want to add that and we want to know the change in length. So we want to know delta L, big triangle L. I'll start my equation and then I'll use backslash. We start a command. This is just another command. And we type delta. Notice that's not the delta we want. This is lowercase delta. To get the uppercase, we use capital D. So LaTeX is case sensitive. If you put in Little d, you're going to get little delta. Big D, you're going to get the big delta. So there we go. There's the triangle we want. And then we wanted L. So we typed in L, and now we have an error. Now we have this. This is not what we want. This isn't our triangle to L. It thinks that L is part of our command here. So we got to tell it, no, 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 no. Slash delta is the command, and then L is a letter after. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use curly brackets. Use curly brackets a whole lot when using LaTeX and Overleaf here. So I put that slash and then big delta. There's our triangle. Then outside the brackets, I'm going to put everything else. There's L. So when you're typing equations in, it's going to read it left or right. It reads, okay, in this bracket, we have this symbol, and then we're going to move on to whatever's over here now, which is L. So there's our delta L. Perfect. It works other ways too. Say we wanted pi, we just put slash pi. There it is, we got pi. Let's say we wanted epsilon. There's epsilon. Okay, let's say we wanted to find a symbol we don't know. Say we wanted to find rho, and I don't know what the command for rho is. There's a few ways you can find it. One, you could use the help, or you can search for it in Overleaf. That works. It might take a while. The fastest way would be to just Google it. Google what is rho in LaTeX or what is rho in Overleaf. It'll probably take you to an Overleaf website, which has all the information you need, or some kind of thread. There's so much information on the internet. You could use that method. Or there's a neat little thing that I found online called Detexify, and I have a link to it in my example document. I'll take you to it right here. So this is what it looks like, and you have this white box where you can draw in. So if I want to know what rho is, I can draw rho in here. And look, there it is. We have a couple options too, but I'm going to use the simple one, just slash rho. So you can copy that, paste it in here, and there we go, we have rho. Now, what about structures for your equations? Let's say we wanted to add more than just symbols. What if we wanted to add an exponent to this? Maybe we wanted rho squared. But just like before, I'm going to put the rho in some curly brackets. And to write an exponent or a superscript, we're going to press this guy here, that little arrow. Same thing you would use for, say, Wolfram Alpha or most online calculators. It's just that upward arrow, and then you press your exponent, whatever you want in the exponent. Let's say I want 2. There you go. You have rho squared. I could compile that. There we got rho squared over here. Let's say we wanted rho 2x. If I type that, notice the x doesn't go in the exponent. We have to put whatever's in the exponent in curly brackets if we're using more than one character. So let's say, what if we wanted a subscript? We wanted this to be rho 1. We use this underscore 1. There you go. Let's say I wanted 1x. So now I'm going to have to use those curly brackets because I have more than one character. Rho 1x. There we go. Let's say we wanted a fraction. Let's say rho is equal to some fraction. We're going to use another command. So we're going to use slash and then frac. And you'll see it pop up with 2 curly brackets. There we go. These curly brackets are the numerator and the denominator. So on the left, it's the top, the numerator, and you got the denominator here at the bottom. So let's say rho is equal to 1 over 2. So the top bracket would be 1, the bottom would be 2. And there we go. We got rho is equal to 1 over 2. Cool. Let's say we wanted it equal to a square root. So a radical. We got a square root with sqrt, square root, and then curly brackets like always. Let's say it equals x. There we go. Anything in this curly bracket will go into the square root. So if I 1 over 2, there we have x equals 1 over 2. We can put a fraction in there if we wanted to. There's 1 over 2. There you go, 1 over 2. Just like that. What if we don't know the type of structure we're looking for? Let's say I want to know how to put an integral in there. I don't know how to do that. Like I said, Google it. Google it. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to Google it right now. So let's say integrals in Overleaf. Overleaf. First thing that pops up. There we go. We have a whole bunch of integrals. We have the code here, what it looks like. So let's say I want this definite integral. I can just copy and paste it. There we go. There it is. Press enter, and there's our integral. You could edit it however you want, but that's the basic premise. See, when you do these things, this is the Overleaf site. So if you're going to do something, I would recommend going to the Overleaf site to get things. It's just more trustworthy. But when you do these things, you kind of have to understand how they work. So if I'm looking at, I'm reading it left to right, I have /int. So I'm going to assume that's my integral. int is integral. I have a subscript symbol, a. So that's just saying, oh, look, my a is just a subscript. And then I have an exponent b. Oh, that's just an exponent there. And then I have my formulates in there. And then dx. That's all it is. And I can just recognize, oh, these are the things to make a centered equation. That's all those are. So the last little math thing I'd like to show you is how to make a matrix. So the matrix stuff is a little more complicated, but it's not bad at all still. Just like before, we're going to start our equation, and then we're going to use a /begin. So we're going to begin something. We're going to begin a matrix. So to start that, you press B matrix. So it's a B matrix. And then sometimes when you do it, you see it's red. It didn't automatically put the end matrix in there, so you got to end that thing as well. So end B matrix. There we go. Now it's happy. So to write my matrix stuff, it goes by rows. You fill out your first row, and then you fill out your second row, and then your third row. So you're going to put in your first thing. So I'm going to say A is the first thing in my matrix. And then I want to put the second thing in. So I'm going to use the and symbol. So A, and then B. And you'll see I have A here in my first row, first column, and then B, still the first row, but the second column. Say I want a third one, and C. There we go. So now we have 3 columns. I could just keep doing this, go 4, 5, 6, however many I want. But at some point, I want to get to go to the next row. So what I'm going to do is double slash, just like I do to break a line in text. It's the same thing. It's just that double slash. And you don't have to do this, but I press enter just to visualize my matrix a little better. So I can do this same thing. D and E and F. There we go. And I could do it again. I can make a third row. G, H, I. And there we go. I have a 3x3 matrix. And the thing is, you don't have to keep these as letters. You can put them as an equation. I could have I squared at the end, at the bottom there. Right? So you can have a whole bunch of things, whatever you want. But that's how a matrix works. And I let go, and there it is. It's our matrix. Let's say we want to name this matrix. We want to call it A. Well, this stuff is all just a line. It's just one big line. And it works just like a normal equation. You read left to right. So essentially, I could say, oops, A is equal to, and it'll say A is equal to, and then read what's next in the line, which is our matrix. So we get A equals our matrix here. One last thing I'd like to cover before I let you go is a little formatting thing. A lot of the time you look in a formula sheet and it's not just one line, not one thing of text. You have columns just to make use of all your space. Maybe you'll see that on a test, or maybe it'll be like that for your assignment you're making, or whatever it is. Columns might be useful. It's another formatting thing. So to do this, you're going to open your preamble and you have to use a new package. So this one is going to be multi-cols. So multi-columns. There it is, multi-col, right there. So you're going to add this one, multi-col. And now you can go down here and add columns. So you do this by using just your begin command like you do all the time. And you're going to use multi-cols. Multi-col. It ends with an S, multi-cols. Sometimes it doesn't pop up just like with the matrix, so you have to type it in manually, and multi-cols. And there we go. Now it's happy. Okay, so I typed this out over and over and over again. Here's my example of my text. So I want it in columns. So if I press render, if I recompile here, notice that everything goes red. It's not happy. Things kind of break. You got a random T here. The thing about this one, you got to remember to indicate how many columns you want. So I'm going to put curly brackets, and this is where you say how many columns you want. So let's say I want 3 columns. I recompile. There's 3. There's there's 1, there's 2, and there's the third one. If I wanted 2 like before, but without it breaking, I have to indicate that there's 2. So now it's not breaking, and everything's nice and neat. Let's say, for example, I didn't want just this column section to be column. Maybe I want the entire sheet to be columns. Let's say you just put it up here now. You just put it right there. We'll recompile. And now the entire thing is in columns. So you got the title in here in a column, you got everything. Your entire thing is in there. As long as it's in between the begin multicols and the end multicols. It's all going to be in columns, however many you want. And that's about everything you might need to make an equation sheet, make an assignment, write a document. That's kind of all the basics, and you'd be able to find most things if you just Google it or use the tools I gave you. And I also encourage you to take a look at the examples that I made in the example file. That's going to be linked to the video in the bottom. So I hope that helps, and I hope you're able to use something. Thanks for watching.